learning Chumash with our Hachaim HaKadosh, and we're learning Parshas Behaaloscha. This is some nice insights, as always. He starts off with the first pasuk. So let's go over the first pasuk. The pasuk says, I'm sorry, the second pasuk. The first pasuk is Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lema. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying. Then comes the second pasuk. It says, "Speak to Aaron and tell him that when you light up the candles, they should face the middle candle. El mul pnei hamenorah ya'iru shivas. All 7 candles should face. So when you light up the candles, they should face the middle one. That's basically the meaning of the verse. Now, the Hachaim is going to deal with a few problems. Number one, and he has a few insights on this one pasuk. Number one, the concept of the word of lighting up the candles. He could have used the word. The pasuk could have said behadlikcha, when you light up. Doilek is a word for igniting and lighting up, and instead he used the word behaaloscha, elevating. So that's first. That's one point. Another point is that what does it mean that they're facing this middle candle, and why does it say in this pasuk, speak to Aaron and say to him, daber el Aaron v'amarta elav. That's like a double language. It's redundant. Speak and say, speak to him and say to him. So there's a number of issues so let's go through it. Let's go through what the Hachaim says here. So he says, first of all, why does it say, he starts off with that question, why does it say daber and v'amarta? Again, we're talking about lighting up the menorah, and it mentions about Moshe telling Aaron that when he does it, he should have them facing the middle one. So why does it say speak to Aaron and say to him? Generally, daber is called a lashon kasha, more strict and severe type of strong language, commanding, authoritative, and v'amarta is often more soft. Also, v'amarta we've seen in the Hachaim in the past a number of times where the Hachaim takes the word v'amarta and says it's similar to Es Hashem he'emarta hayoim v'Hashem he'emircha hayoim. You have praised and glorified Hashem, and Hashem has praised and glorified you. And that's what it says in Hashem's tefillin. Hashem he'emircha hayoim. And so the Hachaim says that, let's take a look at the famous Medrash. The Medrash asks, why is the menorah that it mentions here in the pasuk, why does it come right after Parshas Nasai, which a major part of Parshas Nasai was the Nesiim, the sacrifices, the donations by the leaders of the tribes. So the leaders of the tribes gave this very nice donation, and Hashem said each day they're going to give a donation, and it involved sacrifices, it involved certain items, it's an incense, it involved silver and so on. So they donated these the wagons. So it involved a number of items that they donated as part of the inauguration ceremony of the tabernacle. And right afterwards, it mentions the menorah. Why is the menorah mentioned right after this? Why does it have in Parshas Behaaloscha right after the Nesiim, the parsha of the leaders where they gave donations? So he says what Rashi says. which is based on a medrash. Rashi doesn't make it up. It's based on the medrash Rabbah, Bamidbar Rabbah, where it says that Aaron saw that the Nesiim, they made this Chanukas Hamizbeach, the inauguration of the altar, and he got jealous. He felt depressed. Holsha Daitoi. His mind was weak. He felt depressed. And because he said, I'm not part of this. Why, not only I am not part of it, my tribe is not part of it. All the other tribes, 12 tribes donated and not me. And he felt, I guess, a little jealous that he missed out on this opportunity. And Hashem said, don't feel bad. Your life is greater than theirs. Or maybe like a promise. I promise you, what you have is greater than what they have. Because you are going to light and clean the candles at night and in the morning, etc. And that's the medrash. So this is the famous medrash because we know it from Rashi that Aaron Hachaim was jealous and felt depressed that he wasn't participating in this Chanukas Hamizbeach, and Hashem told him, "Don't feel bad. What you have is even greater." So the Hachaim asks some strong questions on this. He says, "What type of a consolation is this that he didn't participate in the inauguration that the other leaders of the tribes participated in, and he's going to light the menorah? Like, how does that equal? It's not equal. It's not the term he uses is ein ma'aseh hamenorah makbil b'Chanukah. It's not equal. It's not commensurate. It's not in the same league. It's a different type of thing. You light the menorah, fine, but that's not similar to being part of the inaugurations of the of the altar. So he and of the tabernacle in general. So he says also, think about it. What did Aaron do when they brought these sacrifices? Aaron was right there bringing them. He's bringing sacrifices. Why wasn't it good enough that he's being makriv? He's the one bringing all these sacrifices on the altar. And in two, he's really saying 2 points. He says, number one, he's involved in general. Tamids, Musafs, Ketairas. He in general brings all these sacrifices, the daily sacrifices, the additional holiday sacrifices, the incense offering. And the second point is, he says, he was involved in the actual ceremony of the rituals of the specific sacrifices of the leaders who were part of this Chanukas Hamizbeach, that were part of this inauguration. So why wasn't that good enough? But the menorah is going to be his consolation. How is the menorah going to console him? So he says, take a look in the Gemara Menachos. What does the Gemara in Menachos say on page 88? The Gemara over there says that the way that they did the service with the menorah was they would take out the candle holders, so to speak, the oil holders from the menorah and put them in the tent and wipe them with a sponge, put oil in them, which means that there was a like a part of the menorah that was removed and put back. It was not attached to the menorah. It was a mobile piece, a piece that was separate from it. And so somehow the lamp was not actually part of the menorah. The lamp part was removable. And this is one opinion in the Gemara Menachos. There's another opinion there that says it was attached. But the Hachaim is going to talk about this opinion. And afterwards, he'll mention the other opinion. So he says, what would he do? What would the kohen who was involved in the menorah, what would he do? He would take out the lamp part of it and wash it out, clean it out with a sponge and then put the oil in it, and so on. And the other opinion held that the lamps are actually attached to the menorah. And what the kohen would do was that he would bend the lamp downward. In this way, it would be easy for him, I guess, to access and to clean it out. And then he would bend it back up and make it usable. So those are the two opinions that are mentioned in the Gemara. Either they were bendable or they were removable. So the Hachaim says that I would like to, it seems, well, he says an interesting line. He says, if I was there, I would have proved that they were detachable. That's an interesting line to say about a Gemara, and you have two opinions in the Gemara. Normally, you don't say, I would have, opined this way, but the Hachaim says this. He says, I say that if I would have been there, I would have proven that from the verses that they were removable, completely removable. He says, first of all, when it mentions the construction, the Maaseh HaMenorah, which means the building, the making of the menorah, what does it say? It doesn't mention that mul pnei hamenorah ya'iru. It's really brilliant what the Hachaim is saying. Look at the words. It doesn't say and he's talking about in Parshas Vayakel. It doesn't say when they actually made the menorah. It doesn't say that they faced the middle one. You know why? Because the facing of the middle one was not part of how it was made. The menorah wasn't stuck in its place, and it was made in a certain way that you had to make it in that way that it faced the middle candle. Let me just explain this once in a simple terminology. The menorah, there are two opinions of how the menorah was, but let's pick the simple opinion, and that was that the menorah faced north to south. Okay, there's another opinion that it faced east to west, but let's just pick the north to south opinion. So that means that the menorah had it was a candelabra of 7 lamps. There was a middle stem, and then there was 3 on each side. So that menorah, based on the Mishkan, the menorah of the Mishkan, so the middle one, according to this opinion, was called the Ner Mul Pnei HaMenorah. It's called the menorah, the main candle, so to speak, of the menorah. It's the middle one. And that middle one actually faced west towards the Holy of Holies, and the other 6 candles faced the middle one. That's the understanding. Mul Pnei HaMenorah, and that's the meaning of this pasuk. Actually, this pasuk says that El Mul Pnei HaMenorah Yerushavas HaNeros, that they face the middle one, the middle stem. Okay, so now that you understand the practical side of it, the Hachaim wants to say that it must be that the making of the menorah, it had detachable lamps, and so when they made it, it's not going to say where the menorah has to face, where the lamps face, because those lamps were detachable, dependent on when you actually light it. That's when you'll decide where they face, not when you're building it. That's not applicable when you're building the menorah. So this is number one. This is his point, that it must be that they were detachable. Quite a good proof. Doesn't say it in Parshas Vayakhel. Now it's interesting because it does say it in Parshas Truma when they donated the items for the Mishkan. It happens to say it there. He doesn't mention that, but the point he's saying is in Vayakhel when they actually made it, it doesn't mention that they faced the middle one, and it must be, he says, because it wasn't applicable, and he says if the candles would have been permanent, then it should have mentioned it there. That when it's constructed, it's permanent. It should have stayed. It should have mentioned it there. So that's number one. And now he gives another proof. He says that it mentions in Parshas Bamidbar about covering over when they traveled. They covered everything over with a techeles type of covering, or a argaman covering, or a telas shani, a red covering. So they had these cloths that would cover over the items. So it talks about the techeles one, the blue wool, that garment that covered over the menorahs hamar. And what does it say? It covered the menorah. Ve'es neiroi seha. Listen, it's a good proof. Ve'es neiroi seha. Ve'es malkocha. Covered the lamps. It covered the tongs. It covered the spoons. And it covered all the vessels of its oil. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like that these are separate entities. Each item, these are the separate entities. There's the menorah, that's one entity. There's the neiros, the lamps, that's another entity. It sounds like it's different entities. So you see that the candles are not part of it, because why is it separating it and saying it's not? It's like a separate entity than the actual menorah. Otherwise, it would have just said menorah, covered the menorah, covered the tongs. So it must be that it wasn't covered. So anyway, these are his two proofs. And he said, he brings also a third proof. Then he brings the third proof. He says, if you look in Divrei Hayamim, where it talks about Shloimeh HaMelech's Beis HaMikdash, and it mentions over there the menorahs and the lamps of fine gold. We learned a little about it in Malachim, that Shlomo had 10 extra menorahs made that were placed next to the one made by Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were made similar to the one Moshe, the same as Moshe's. And it says, what does it say? It says, Shlomo made all the articles of the temple of Hashem, the menorahs and their lamps of fine gold. It implies like it was a separate entity, because it mentions it separately. And also Rashi says that the language of the pasuk implies that the lamps were part of the body of the menorah, because it says, Rashi seems to say it clearly. Yes, it says menorahs vin neiros sehem. Anyway, so that's his third proof. It sounds like the psukim, the verses seem to prove that they were separate entities. Okay, so what comes out from this? What comes out from this? You just proved three proofs that it must be that the menorah was a separate, that the lamps were separate entities, and what that means is that every time Aaron HaKohen was going to light the menorah. This is this is the meaning of our pasuk. In other words, our pasuk is talking about Aaron's lighting of the menorah. That every time he lights it, he's got to make it in a certain way. He's got to put the opening of that candle like towards the middle. He's got to somehow it was somehow facing like the wick, the not just the wick, maybe depending on how the lamp was positioned, it would be positioned in a way that the wick would be facing the middle candle. So he says this is what the Hashem is telling Aaron and answering him when Aaron feels depressed. He says, you're depressed that you missed out in the inauguration. He says, your portion is greater because every single day you are going to be, in a certain sense, inaugurating the menorah. You take out the neiros, the lamps, and you put it back. You put it down and clean them out, and then you put them back, and you rebuild from scratch. You're rebuilding the menorah, and you're lighting it. So it's as if every day you're doing like a new construction of the menorah, and you're doing a chinuch of the menorah in every lighting, that you're inaugurating the menorah every time you light it. So it sounds like either the actual putting back of the in other words, building it. It's a very interesting insight that the Hachaim is saying here. That he's saying that by you putting it together, taking the lamps and putting them in their place, either that itself is like an inauguration, or that the fact that you're doing that every day and then you light it, the lighting is the inauguration because you're doing the first service of the newly made menorah. The newly made menorah, you're doing the first service, which I guess maybe that sounds more like the inauguration. You're doing the first service. Every single day you get an inauguration. So they got there once in a lifetime inauguration. You're inaugurating it every single day by the fact that you're making the menorah and then you're lighting it you're lighting this newly made menorah every single day. So that gives us a little understanding of the insight of how Hashem was consoling Aaron Hachaim. Okay, so now comes the next thing. It says that he would light it, and this is sort of like a side point. He says he would light it, madlik umeitiv, erev ubayker. He would light it and prepare it. At night, he would light it and prepare it in the morning, clean it out, so to speak. Now we don't find that the lighting of it was in the morning. It was, he says both words. He would light it and he would clean it out or prepare it at night and in the morning. Now the lighting was really at night, was not in the morning, according to most opinions or many opinions. I have mentioned in this class that the Rambam actually says that they would light the menorah by day as well. That is a innovative insight of it. In other words, that's not the simple understanding, because the pasuk says "May erev ad boker," so it sounds like it was only lit at night. All the commentaries talk about this Rambam, what he means. But anyway, the Hachaim is taking the simple understanding that the menorah was lit only at night, and but the middle candle actually the middle candle, it says the Ner Ma'aravi, it's called the western candle, it would face west. That candle needed to be lit night and day, and it says in the Gemara that in the Teres Kayanim that Lahalois Ner Tamid refers to that middle candle. It's called the western candle, and that would constantly be lit. And if they found that it went out, he would clear away the ashes and light it immediately from the mizbeach, from the altar. But that candle was supposed to be lit tamid. And what comes out is that there was an element of lighting the candle at night and by day, which referred to the middle candle. So in other words, even if you hold that you don't light the candles by day, which is most of the other views, not the Rambam, but still, if that middle candle went out, they would relight it, and by day. And nor under normal circumstances, it actually stayed lit. And it was a great miracle that it stayed lit. Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about before, here comes the Hachaim continues, and he says, so it comes out that you are machanech the menorah. You get to inaugurate the menorah every single day, and the leaders of the tribes only inaugurated the altar once when you brought the sacrifices. But you, Aaron, you get to remake the menorah because each of the lamps were not attached to the menorah itself. You had to make the menorah every day, and then you would light it. So you're inaugurating the menorah on a daily basis. They only did their thing once. You're doing it every day. And this is what it means, daber in v'amarta. Speak to Aaron about the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, the mitzvah part. That's the dibur, authoritative. And v'amarta is tell him about, give him some words of consolation. V'amarta is like speak to him in a nice way and restore his weakness, his sadness, and by telling him that his portion is greater. And then he gives the other interpretation of v'amarta, that v'amarta is often means glory and exaltedness. So he said that you are v'amarta. You should explain to Aaron that that your portion is more exalted than everyone else's, superior to the others. That's the term v'amarta. That v'amarta is glorified. Your portion is more glorified and honored and superior and so on. So that would be the two terms, daber and v'amarta. But bottom line is, it's a very nice insight that the menorah had to be remade every single day. And I would just add to this idea that it's brought down different places that the menorah symbolized the Torah. And the concept of learning Torah and feeling it fresh every single day fits with the concept of the menorah having to be remade every single day. In other words, it comes out that from all the articles of the tabernacle, it was one article that had to be remade every single day, and that was the menorah. But anyway, the Hachaim doesn't mention that. I'm just throwing an idea. That how important it is to always feel that what we're learning is not old stuff; it's fresh. Okay, every day it should be considered like it's something new, fresh. Okay, then the Hachaim talks about the other opinion. Even if you learn that they are the menorah, the neiros, the candles were actually fixed in part and parcel of the menorah, nevertheless they were thin stems that could be bent. They were flexible, could bend them to clean them out, bend them down and clean them out. And he says, according to that, you could also say that it actually was created every single day because you're rebending it into shape. So you're being mechanech every single day. And that would be the meaning of speak to him and tell him. In other words, that would answer the question as well about daber and v'amarta. In other words, even according to the opinion that they were fixed and attached, you could also say this idea that you're still making the menorah new because you're sort of bending it out of shape and then putting it back into shape. Okay, so that's his first insight of the Hachaim. Very nice insight. Of course, it's an interesting idea that he comes up with, but that's how it would console Aaron that he's actually inaugurating the menorah on a daily basis. Okay, now comes the next idea, and that's Behaaloscha, when you lift up or when you ignite, when you light up. And he says, the Chaim says, of course, there's the rabbis have many, they talk about this. There's a lot of drushes about this, Dorsh Medrashim about it. In fact, Rashi himself says Behaaloscha means that you got to make sure to light the menorah in a way that that it's not like flickering, that it's shalheves oila me'eleha, that the flame lights up on its own, that it's fully solid. It's a good light. That's how you should light it. When you light the menorah, make sure that it's solid. It's a good. It's a strong light. Shalheves me'eleha. Yes.
I missed a lot in the beginning, so if you pass on this, I apologize. But I had recently learned that part of the I don't know if it's related to Behaaloscha, but that the Neros, he lit just the Ner Hamaravi. When he touched the flame for the Ner Hamaravi, it then traveled down from there to light the other six. So his hadlaka was just of that. And from there, it went down to the six individual cups. They didn't go like, do you go from the left to the right or the right to the left, or if you skipped one? You didn't do that. You just touched the one there in the center. Now, I don't recall exactly where I had learned this, but I was just curious if you had learned or heard or.
I don't remember that miracle. What I do recall, I think the Hachaim over here mentions it, and that is that that he would start. Well, I mean, Rashi mentions it. It's from this medrash. Ba hayamaschil. He would start with it, and then from there, from that candle, he would light the others. So maybe that you're muted.
What do you mean from that candle? You're lighting it with what? You're bringing something
the fire
from the Mizbeach.
From the Mizbeach.
To the menorah.
Right.
And you're touching it to the first candle, but you're still holding on to it. Whatever it is you brought from the Mizbeach.
Uh-huh.
No? Is it a flame? Is it just a coal?
So if I remember,
difference.
When I prepared this, 1 second, let me just look at the Hachaim.
I mean, was there a shamus used to light in the beginning? I used to think, they were all candles. So, you light the first one, then you use that. Like a shamus. And there was no shamus involved in any way in the avodah, as far as I knew.
I saw something here, and I'm just you're reminding me.
Look up the Easter on the Drushim now. Probably has a lot.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it now. But anyway, I'll try to look it up. Yeah. I mean, of course, the simple reading sounds like he's lighting the Neros,
Rose,
not just lighting one. But
Right.
what you're saying sounds like it might be a medrash. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So the next insight of the Hachaim is that so he would lift up. So I'm sorry. So yeah. So he would light the neiros, and it says lifting it up, and it doesn't say madlik that he would light them. Now he also the Hachaim now mentions, he says, why didn't Hashem command this on the first day of the Avodah, which would be when they did the Shivas Yimei Hamaluim. That's when it should be, not now, which is at the end of the when the leaders brought their sacrifices, where right the Parshas Nase was from the first day of Nisan until the 13th day of Nisan, when each of the tribes brought their sacrifices. Each day was one sacrifice, and now it talks about Behaaloscha. So why didn't it say this then? B'yom Rishon, meaning the first day. He's saying, why doesn't it say it on the first day, meaning of the inauguration? Because it should have applied then. And over there it says Behaaloscha in Parshas Truma, it mentions Behaaloscha Seha v'heyer alever paneha, that he would light the candles and they would shine towards the middle one. So he says, it already says it in Parshas Truma, this idea. And why is it repeating it here? And why does it say in our pasuk Ya'iru, implying like like it happens by itself, and it doesn't say you should light. It says they will be lit, or they will Ya'iru, towards the middle one, they will shine, they will be lit. But it doesn't sound, he's not commanding him to light it. So he's in other words, Behaaloscha sounds like you're doing something, and then when it says Ya'iru, it sounds like they're lit. So again, the terminology, the term, the past, present,
Just to be consistent with.
It is not consistent. Tense is not consistent. So he says that the way I explained it before, that the candles are not attached. So therefore, Hashem is commanding that every time you go to clean it out, you remove the lamps. You have to raise them up, afterwards, to arrange them in their place in the menorah, and you should put them in a way that they're facing the middle branch. Position the like the spout of each of the lamps to be facing the middle one. So in other words, it's Behaaloscha haneros, when you're establishing them after you clean them out. Behaaloscha, when you put them in their place, when you elevate them into their location, they should face the mul pnei hamenorah. Really changes the when you know this Gemara and Menachos and how it mentions this opinion, it actually fits very nicely. It's Behaaloscha haneros, when you lift it up and put it in its place. It's not about lighting it; it's building it. Behaaloscha is really building it when you're putting it, lifting it up to put it where it belongs. So put it al mul pnei hamenorah, have the spout of it facing the middle menorah, the middle candle. So that's what it means, and that would be the meaning of Behaaloscha, and that would also So in other words, it doesn't say Behaaloscha, it says Behaaloscha. It's talking about building it. It's not talking about lighting it. And he says that's why it also says that it will be lit. It'll shed light. Ta'ir. I'm sorry. It will give light, but not that you should give light. It doesn't say ta'ir. It says ya'iru. It will give light, meaning it's not your. The mitzvah is not. We're not talking about you lighting it. Ta'iru would sound like you're the mitzvah of lighting it. You should light it in a way that it. But here we're talking about putting it together in a way that it will end up being lit that way. In other words, make the candelabra in a way that, when you attach the lamps, they'll be facing the middle one. And he says, and this explains why it was said in this pasuk here, in this stage, in this situation, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who fulfilled this type of procedure in the inauguration days during the 7 days of inauguration, and the problem was Hashem was concerned that maybe Aaron will say it doesn't matter how I set them, how I set the candles, what facing, whichever way they're facing. Maybe the facing
Also,
wasn't.
what do you mean by facing? Was the cup itself tilted towards the center? In which case, how did it burn? I mean, the liquid in there doesn't like to be turned sideways. That stays level when you have a wick. So that's one. Or was it the wicks that would turn towards that big wicks that they turned to? That I'm trying to figure out what that means. I tried with my menorah, my Hanukkah, to make the wicks face in a certain direction, and so it didn't go through.
So it seems that there's like each of these lamps had some type of a spout to it that might have been more to one side. So where do you put that? So they would put it towards the middle one, so that like the spout, which I guess is maybe similar to like a of course all the oil menorahs, they try to have a way to sort of like force it to stay in the middle, but in our ner Chanukahs, in our menorahs for Chanukah, but it seems like they had more like a spout, and it could have been more directed into one side of it, and that side would have faced the middle. That's my understanding. Okay, so anyway, so he says that there was a thought that maybe such a rule only applied during the 7 days of inauguration, and where Moshe was the one assembling the Mishkan and cleaning out and acting like the Kohen Gadol, and it's interesting because there's really question about this. Did this service happen during the days of the Shiva Simei Amaluim? Or did the daily services really start on Rosh Chodesh Nisan? It seems like there's discussion about that. But in any event, the Hachaim here seems to say that they did have these type of, they did do this daily service. And anyway, so Moshe Rabbeinu would have been the one to do that. But the problem was, does it apply even later? And that's the purpose of our pasuk, is to say that it applies even after the initial inauguration days. It even applies. It's a general rule. So then it comes the next Hachaim. So in other words, Aaron was commanded that how to set it up. It was important even after the initial inauguration. This was a continuous mitzvah. Okay, so now comes the next. Actually, the Hachaim adds one point that I should mention, and that is that the the command is repeated here. It's because it's meant to tell Aaron. It's not just for Moshe, but it applies even after Moshe finishes the inauguration. Then the question really is: so why does it say it now, after all the sacrifices of the Nisim, where it really could say it before the sacrifice? Because this applied even on the first day of Nisan. This would apply, and the answer is that because the purpose of this statement is also to calm Aaron down from his being insulted or depressed or jealous, and so it mentions it here so that you'll make that connection and understand that this is a consolation to Aaron. In other words, after all the kabbanas were brought, this consoled Aaron that that he has a special element of the inauguration. Okay, now comes the next thing, and that is that they face the middle candle. And Hachaim here brings a Gemara. The Gemara says that, does Hashem really need light? Does he need the light in the tabernacle? He answers this question. The Gemara answers the question. The Gemara says, does Hashem need light? Wasn't Hashem in the desert for leading the Jewish people for 40 years in the desert? So he's the source of the light. Everyone walked by his light. So do you think Hashem needs light? He gave everyone light. So rather, this is a testimony that the Shekhinah rests amongst the Yidden, because the middle candle, that called the Western candle, you would put the same amount of oil in it as all the others, and you would start lighting with it, but you would end, it would actually last longer, conclude the lighting with it, meaning it would last longer than all the other candles. Now, that's the medrash. So he says, according to this, so it's all about a testimony that Hashem dwells amongst the Yidden. So he says, Hashem commands the Kohen to direct all the candles, all the lamps towards the middle one, because he wants everyone to see that the middle one is the miracle one. So if all the candles are facing that middle candle, that candle lasts all night and all day. So it'd be a great, it shows how that Hashem's dwelling amongst the Yidden. This is a miracle. It shows that miracle. And they're in contrast to the Western lamp. They're all in a contrast to that one, that they were, that middle one, the fire stays forever. The fire continues to burn. Now, he says, Tais was bothered with a question over there. He says, why does it say that does Hashem need light? Didn't Hashem give them light in the desert for 40 years? So Tais is surprised. He says, that's the issue, that it gave light. They gave light for 40 years. Tais asked, why doesn't it say that Hashem gives light for the whole world? Hashem gives the luminaries, right? Hashem shines light for everyone. Hashem created the heavens and the earth, So why does it say, this is Tais's question? So the Hachaim says, not such a strong question, he says, because really they saw the light. In other words, That's a munah that Hashem created the sun and the moon. That we have from faith. But this, when they dwelled in the desert, they saw this special light that Hashem gave them. What does that mean? What does it refer to? So it says they were able to see what's inside a jug. That inside a jug, they were able to see outside of it what's in it. They had a certain light that they had. And he says the whole purpose of the fire. The Hachaim mentions this in Shemais. He doesn't say it here, but he mentions it in Shemais that the fire that they had that was night. What did they need that fire? They could see everything. He says that fire was outside the camp, but in the camp they actually could see everything. They could see everything, even things that were closed, closed jug. They could see what's inside it. So they had the special light, and that light, it says that the candle, the menorah was not needed for light because they had this special light that they were able to, that was there. It says Chol Bnei Yisrael, which symbolizes this idea that they had a special light in the camp that the Jewish people were. But the menorah was meant to be a testimony that Hashem dwells amongst the Yidden. And now comes the next beautiful insight, and that is that the menorah, a continuation of this idea that the menorah is.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Before you go to the next idea.
Yeah.
So the Behaaloscha, I'm following along in the Behaaloscha Chumash, and he says that the three words Pnei HaMenorah Ya'iru, those three words are the gematria of 673, which is equal to the gematria of V'chiani L'orech Tzarech. Am I in need of your light?
5 minutes. Okay, so the thank you. Yeah, good interesting gematria. Thank you. So the next point the Hachaim makes over here is about the menorah being the 7 candles of the 7 lamps, and it's all about showing testimony. So the question the Hachaim asks is, you have 3 candles on each side, 3 lamps, and the fire is facing the middle one. So it shows us that we're supposed to be looking at the middle one. And it's a very interesting insight that we're supposed to be looking at that middle candle and seeing that this is the testimony that Hashem dwells amongst the Yidden, and that candle always stayed lit, and that was a great miracle, and it showed that Hashem is dwelling there. Hashem is resting amongst us. So without those candles, we wouldn't know to look to the middle one and see. So in other words, the other candles are sort of like signs, directing you. Go look. It's like an arrow. Look at the middle candle. This is where the Shekhinah is. Now, the Hachaim says, why wouldn't one be good enough on each side? One on each side, one arrow on each side to show you to look for the middle. So he says, Yesh Leimar, he says that, first of all, the simple understanding is, it was beautiful to have 3. It was, made it more, 7 lamp candelabra is more beautiful than this, just a 3 candelabra. It would be too plain. So, you have the extra candles made it much more. But he says, B'derech HaRemez, it symbolizes, this is very powerful, Hachaim. He says that the 7 candles symbolize the 70 nations. Each candle symbolizes 10. In general, in Kabbalistic writings, you have this idea that the zeros you could push aside. You have a candle, it could symbolizes 10. And so the 7 candles symbolize the 70 nations, and that they're all facing towards the Ma'aravi, which is the middle one, the Yidden. And
then it's only 6.
Yeah, but he says
there's only 6 facing if they're all going towards Ma'aravi.
But the pasuk says El Ya'iru Shivas Haneros.
I understand. Okay.
The pasuk fits with this. That the pasuk says the 7 candles face the middle one. It symbolizes, in other words, the middle one is able to symbolize 2 things. It symbolizes another 10 of the goyim, but it symbolizes that everything is facing it, meaning that
going up.
That everything is
going up
towards the Yidden, directing their light towards the western one, which represents the Yidden, and they are called the Ma'arav. They're called the West. So the Yidden are called the Ma'arav. That's an interesting term, that we're called the West. A spiritual essence of the Jewish people. And so anyway, so he continues and he says that, and he hints to it that all the goyim are going to be destroyed because they all go out. All the other, this is powerful. All the other candles, they go out early. The middle one stays lit constantly. That's the Yidden who are going to exist forever. All the other candles are extinguished, and the middle one lasts forever. And it comes out, he says, that when did they light the menorah? At night. According to the way, the common understanding, the menorah was lit at night. What's light? What's night? Golus, exile. So he says that that the success of the goyim will last only during the exile, and then when the morning comes, all the lights of the goyim are going to be extinguished, and the only thing that will be left is the lamp of Klal Yisrael. The Yishar from what be remaining from their group is only the light of Klal Yisrael, which stays lit forever. And he also hints to the Hadlakas Haneros, in the mitzvah of lighting the candles, that the one who lights it, their light should be facing the middle one, that everything is for the Yidden. In other words, that the Goyim should get blessing. You're lighting all these candles, but their material blessing of the nation should be dedicated towards that. It should be dedicated for the Yidden, and we are called the face of the menorah. That Mesyaches Lamshem Panim, we're called the face of it for those. It says Ki Yadua L'Yoide L'Mavinim, like is known to those that understand Kabbalah. So, in other words, what comes out is that lighting the menorah is bringing success to the goyim, and but he should have in mind that it ultimately should be of service to the Yidden. All the success that they have should ultimately be a blessing, bring blessing to the Yidden. It should be directed towards the Yidden, and that's what it means that Ya'iru Mul Pnei HaMenorah, goes faces the menorah, Ya'iru Shivas HaNeros, that all their success will ultimately go to the Yidden. So that's a very Kabbalistic idea, a great insight of the Hachaim about the Yidden are going to last forever, the Goyim are going to be destroyed, the time of Golus, that all their success is only in the time of exile. When Mashiach comes in the morning, the candles will go out, but the menorah of Klal, but the light of the Yidden is going to stay forever. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Sei gesund.
One question, if I can.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rebbe,
Yeah.
I have